Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner Stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I downloaded a dark web list of people who officially never existed. One of the names matched my old babysitter from 1996. Alright, so before I start, let me just say, I'm not the kind of person who believes in conspiracy theories or any of that government is hiding people type shit. I like true crime. I watch horror movies. And yeah, I've clicked on some of those deep web horror stories or YouTube videos at 2 a.m. like everyone else. But I never thought I'd be the one telling a story like this. This happened about 6 months ago, and I still haven't wrapped my head around it. I don't know what's scarier, that I found what I found, or that someone, somewhere, knows that I did. Anyway, let me back up. I work in IT. Nothing fancy, just your regular cybersecurity job, making sure people don't click on sketchy links or download viruses. I know my way around the dark web, but I don't really mess with it much, mostly because it's 90% scams and 10% actual illegal shit that you don't want to stumble into. But one night, I was messing around on a Tor forum, just lurking. People post weird stuff there all the time. Leaked documents, creepy pasta-level mysteries, lost media. Most of it is bullshit. But then, I saw this thread. The registry of those who were never here. It had no replies. No upvotes, just sitting there like it was waiting for someone. The post was simple. There are people who exist, but don't. Who lived and then didn't. Who were seen and then weren't. This is a list of names. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. And beneath that, a download link. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why the hell would you click that? And yeah, normally I wouldn't. But I was curious, and stupidly, I figured it was just some creepypasta project or ARG, so I downloaded it. It was a text file. Nothing flashy, just a long list of names. No addresses, no photos, just names. Some had birth years next to them, some didn't. Some were common. John Smith, Emily Carter. Others were weird, foreign, unpronounceable. I started scrolling, expecting, I don't know, something more interesting. Maybe a weird code, maybe some hidden message, but it was just names, until I saw one that made my stomach drop. Megan Holloway, 1996, my old babysitter. I hadn't thought about Megan in years, not since I was, 7, 8, but seeing her name there, it hit me like a gut punch. Because Megan Holloway disappeared when I was a kid. I don't remember much from when I was 6. Fragments, mostly. The way my mom's perfume smelled when she kissed me goodnight. The glow of the living room TV when I snuck out of bed to watch cartoons. The sound of Megan laughing when she spun me around in the backyard. The world a dizzy blur of sky and grass and her long dark hair. I remember loving her. I remember feeling safe, and then I remember her vanishing, not like a slow fade, not like some moved away thing where my parents sat me down and explained. One day, she was just gone, and nobody talked about it. I didn't understand it back then. All I knew was that my parents started acting weird. My mom stopped hiring babysitters. My dad got angry when I asked about her. The house got quiet, tense. At some point, I stopped asking, and now, 28 years later, her name was staring back at me from a list of people who never existed. I clicked off the file, my heart pounding. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Megan Holloway wasn't exactly a rare name, but I could feel it, deep in my stomach, that this wasn't random. I needed proof. I opened Facebook and typed her name into the search bar. Hundreds of results. None of them her. Okay. Weird, but not crazy. Maybe she got married and changed her name. Maybe she just wasn't on social media. Next, I tried Google. Nothing. No missing person reports. No social media profiles. No old yearbook photos. No record of her ever existing. I checked my parents' Facebooks, scrolling through old family photos. Nothing. No pictures of me with her. No old birthday party albums where she should have been. I felt sick. Megan was real. I knew she was real. She wasn't just some childhood dream, some made-up memory. So why was there no trace of her anywhere? I dug deeper. The incident in 1996. I found an old newspaper archive, a paywalled site that let you search scanned articles. I typed in Megan Holloway. Only one result popped up. Local teen disappears in babysitting tragedy, October 4th, 1996. I clicked. The article was short. Megan Holloway, 17, went missing while babysitting for an unnamed family in Redacted County. Authorities conducted a brief search but found no evidence of foul play. The family declined to comment. That was it. No follow-ups, no updates, no nothing. It didn't make sense. 17-year-old girls don't just disappear without a trace, especially not while babysitting. Someone would have looked for her. The parents, her own family, the cops. But it was like she'd been erased. And then I saw something that made my skin go cold. At the bottom of the article, a note from the editor. This article has been altered from its original version at the request of law enforcement. Altered. That word made my hands shake. What had they changed? What had they removed? I checked the Wayback Machine, an archive of old web pages. It had an older scan of the article, from back when the newspaper still had an online presence. The original text was different. Megan Holloway, 17, was last seen babysitting for the Redacted family. Neighbors reported hearing screams around midnight, but police found no evidence of forced entry. A later search of the residence revealed significant blood evidence, but no body. The family refused to answer further questions and moved out of state within the week. The case remains unsolved. The words blurred on the screen. I could barely breathe. Blood evidence. Screams. My parents never told me any of this. I was there that night. In that house. What the fuck happened to Megan? The VHS tape. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called my mom. She picked up after 2 rings. Hey honey, everything okay? I need to ask you something, I said, my voice dry. Do you remember Megan? Silence. I heard the TV in the background, some game show, the sound of canned applause. But my mom wasn't saying anything. Then, why are you asking about Megan? Something about her voice made my stomach twist. I just found something online about her, from when she went missing. A long pause, then quietly. Honey, let it go. What? Mom, she was our babysitter. She disappeared in our house. You never told me. There's nothing to tell. I could hear the tension in her voice now. Not anger, fear. I know something happened, I said. I found an old article. There was blood, Mom. People heard screaming. I said let it go. Then she hung up. I sat there, my phone still in my hand, my pulse hammering in my ears. I needed more. I tore through our attic that night. Old boxes, family albums, anything that might have a picture of Megan, but it was like she'd never existed. No photos, no birthday cards, nothing, until I found the box labeled Home Movies. Inside, a stack of dusty VHS tapes, Christmas mornings, beach trips, my 3rd birthday, and one tape with no label. My stomach turned as I picked it up. The plastic felt wrong in my hands, sticky, like dried glue. I hooked up my old VCR and slid in the tape. Static. Then, a grainy shot of our living room, the old brown couch, the TV blaring some 90s cartoon, and on the floor, a little boy. Mr. I was sitting with a pile of toys, babbling to myself. The camera was set on a tripod, unmoving. Then Megan walked into frame. She was smiling, young, pretty, wearing that same oversized Nirvana sweatshirt I remembered. She sat next to me, ruffling my hair. The footage jumped. The timestamp at the bottom skipped ahead 3 hours. The screen was darker now. The living room was empty. The camera was still rolling. Then, from the hallway, a figure. Not Megan, not my parents. Tall, skinny, moving in an unnatural, jittery way, like something was wrong with its joints. It stepped into the light, and I felt ice crawl down my spine. It was wearing a mask, a cheap, white plastic mask, like the kind you'd get at a party store. Blank eyes, no mouth. It stood there, completely still, facing the camera. Then it moved, slow, deliberate, not toward the camera, toward the hallway, toward my bedroom. The tape cut to static. My hands were ice cold. I ejected the tape so fast I almost broke it. I don't know what happened to Megan. I don't know who or what was in our house that night. But I know one thing for sure. That thing didn't come for her. It came for me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch, staring at the VHS tape, feeling like I was 6 years old again, small, helpless, and watched. That thing on the tape, that thing in my house, the way it moved, the way it stood there, waiting before it turned toward my bedroom. It was in my house, for me. And yet, Megan was the one who disappeared. I needed to know more. So the next morning, running on no sleep and too much caffeine, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove back to my childhood home, the house on Ashwood Lane. My parents sold the house when I was 12. The new owners had renovated it, repainted the outside, replaced the old porch, even put up one of those cutesy live, laugh, love signs by the front door. But beneath all of that, it was still the house, the place where Megan disappeared. I sat in my car for a long time, just staring at it, wondering how much of what happened that night still lingered inside. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to knock. A woman in her 40s answered. Short blonde hair, yoga pants, the kind of person who looked like she did meal prep and went to wine nights with the neighborhood moms. She looked me up and down, a little suspicious. "Can I help you?" I swallowed. Yeah. Sorry. This is kind of weird, but I used to live here when I was a kid. I was wondering if I could take a look around, just for nostalgia. She hesitated. I knew she was going to say no. Then, from inside, a kid's voice. "Mom, let him in." A boy, maybe 10 or 11, peered out from behind her. Messy brown hair, oversized hoodie, eyes too sharp for his age. He was staring at me, not like a kid staring at a stranger, but like he knew me, like he'd been expecting me. The woman sighed. "Fine. 5 minutes." I stepped inside. The whispering room. The renovations made the house look different. The kitchen had stainless steel appliances now. The old brown carpet had been ripped out, and the walls were painted a bright, cheery white. but some things were exactly the same. The hallway, the creaky floorboard near the bathroom, the faint, musty smell in the air, and the living room, the same one from the tape. I felt cold all over as I stood there, remembering the flickering image on the VHS. The couch was different. The TV was bigger, but I could still see it. Megan, Mr., and the thing standing in the hallway. "You're looking for her, aren't you?" The boy's voice startled me. I turned. He was standing at the edge of the room, watching me. His mom had disappeared somewhere into the house, leaving us alone. I swallowed. "What?" "The babysitter." My blood turned to ice. I hadn't mentioned Megan. The boy just stared at me. "She never left." I felt my throat go dry. "What do you mean?" He glanced toward the hallway. "She's still in the house." A chill crawled up my spine. I should go," I muttered, turning toward the door. But the boy's voice stopped me cold. "She's in the walls." I froze. My breath hitched. I turned slowly. "What did you just say?" He blinked at me, expression unreadable. "She talks to me sometimes," he said. "At night, from inside the walls." My stomach lurched. This was a joke. It had to be. Some messed up prank, some weird coincidence. But the look in the boy's eyes told me he wasn't lying. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you want to hear her?" I should have said no. I should have walked out of that house and never looked back. But my legs weren't listening. I followed him. The hollow. Behind the walls, he led me down the hallway to a door that used to be a linen closet. He opened it, but instead of shelves and towels, there was a narrow, pitch-black space, a gap between the walls. My stomach flipped. "There's a crawl space back there," the boy whispered. "That's where she is." I stared into the darkness. I didn't want to do this, but my body moved forward anyway. I slid inside, feeling old wood press against my shoulders. The air was thick, dusty. My breath felt too loud. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, revealing a cramped, narrow passage. Old insulation clung to the wooden beams like rotting spiderwebs. And then, scratch. A sound just ahead. I froze. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "She doesn't like the light." The flashlight flickered. Scratch. Scratch. I wasn't alone. My hands shook as I pointed the light ahead. The passage twisted, leading deeper into the walls. And then, a shape, curled in the corner. Small, hunched. Something moved. I couldn't breathe. I lifted the flashlight, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. And then, I saw her. Megan, or what was left of her. Her skin was stretched too tight, her face gaunt, her eyes sunken and wrong. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't alive. But she was moving. Her mouth opened, and in a voice that was barely a whisper, barely human, she said, "It let me stay." My flashlight died. The darkness swallowed me whole. And then, a hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed. I kicked, scrambled, tore myself free, crawling back toward the opening. The boy was still there, watching, his face blank. I burst into the hallway, gasping, slamming the closet door shut behind me. The boy just blinked. "She doesn't like to be alone," he said. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, hands shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. The house stood there behind me, looking so normal, like it hadn't just tried to swallow me whole. I don't know what happened that night in 1996. I don't know what my parents covered up, or why Megan was still there, rotting in the walls. But I know one thing. She never left that house, and something else never did either. I don't remember the drive home, I don't remember pulling into my driveway, don't remember fumbling with my keys, or the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I just remember the feeling, that thick, suffocating wrongness that clung to my skin long after I left the house, like something had followed me, like something had marked me, like something was still watching. I locked every door, every window. I turned on every light in my apartment, checked the closets, under the bed, and still, I didn't feel safe, because Megan was in those walls, and she wasn't alone. The phone call. I spent the night staring at my ceiling, eyes wide, heart hammering. Every noise in the apartment sent my pulse spiking. The creak of the pipes, the hum of the fridge, the wind against the windows. I was wired, trapped in my own skin. I was about to get up, make some coffee, when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated. Then slowly, I answered. I didn't say anything. Neither did the person on the other end. Just breathing. Low, shallow, wrong. I swallowed hard. Who is this? More breathing. Then so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. You shouldn't have gone back. My blood went cold. The voice was distorted, mechanical. Like whoever was speaking was using a voice changer, or like they weren't human at all. I tried to keep my voice steady. Who are you? Silence. Then, she's still in the house. I felt ice in my veins. And now, she knows where to find you. Click. The line went dead. I sat there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Then, outside, a shadow moved past my window. I jumped up so fast I nearly tripped. My heart was slamming against my ribs, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I swore I saw something tall, something wrong. I grabbed the nearest weapon, a kitchen knife, and moved toward the window. My fingers were slick with sweat. I did not want to pull back the curtain, but I had to. I had to. I took a breath, then yanked it aside. Nothing. The street was empty, just my own pale reflection in the glass, wide-eyed, wild. I let out a shaky breath. I was losing it. Then I saw it, not outside, in the reflection, standing behind me, tall, thin, a shape that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite real. A white plastic mask, no eyes, no mouth, just watching me. I spun around, knife raised, pulse screaming. Nothing. The room was empty. I was alone, but I could still feel it, like a breath on the back of my neck, like something had been there, and now it was just waiting. The hospital room. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Instead, I spent the night online, digging, searching for anything about Megan, about the house, about the thing in the mosque. And that's when I found her. Megan's mother. She was still alive, living in a nursing home on the outskirts of town. I didn't think. I just got in my car and drove. It was a rundown place. Fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. The kind of place where people go to be forgotten. I told the nurse I was family. She didn't question it. Megan's mother was in a small, dimly lit room, curled up in a wheelchair. She looked bad, skin sagging, eyes sunken, like something had been draining her for years, like she was rotting from the inside out. Her head turned slightly as I walked in. For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, in a voice so thin, so frail, "You look just like him." I stopped, swallowed. Like who? Her lip trembled. The man in the mask. My stomach dropped. I took a shaky breath. I need to know what happened to Megan. Her fingers twitched against the armrest. I crouched down, lowering my voice. "Please." She swallowed, eyes darting toward the door, like someone might be listening. Then she whispered, "They let him in." A cold prickle crawled down my spine. He was already inside, watching, waiting. The whole time, my hands clenched into fists. What was he? She shuddered. Not a man. Her breath hitched. Not human. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. He doesn't take people. She was shaking now. He keeps them. I felt something in my chest snap. He wears them. A long, thin shadow stretched across the floor. The air turned thick, and in the hallway, a figure, tall, still, watching, a white plastic mask. I turned to scream, but Megan's mother was already dead, mouth open, eyes black, the light behind them gone, and on the wall, written in something dark, something wet, "You let him in." I don't remember leaving the nursing home. 1 minute, I was staring at Megan's mother, her lifeless, hollowed-out corpse, and the next, I was driving, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, the world outside a blur of streetlights and endless darkness. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't breathing. I was just running, because she was right. I let him in. The house that doesn't forget. I don't know why I drove back to my childhood home. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I thought I'd find answers. Maybe some part of me knew I wasn't getting out of this alive. The house loomed ahead. The porch lights were off. The windows were dark. The woman who lived there, the boy, gone. But the door was open, waiting. I stepped inside. The house felt wrong. The air was thick, damp, rotting. Something in the walls was breathing. I swallowed the bile in my throat and moved forward. Every step felt like wading through something heavy, something that pulled me in. I followed it. The feeling, that pull, to the hallway, to the closet, to the crawl space. The door was already open. The darkness inside was hungry. I stepped in. Megan's grave. The walls closed around me. I could barely move, barely breathe. The air was thick with dust and something wet, something that smelled like meat. My flashlight flickered. I took another step, and my foot sank into something soft. I looked down and saw her. Not just Megan. All of them. Bodies, piled in the walls, some fresh, some ancient. Skin stretched over skin. Bones forced into shapes they weren't meant to make. Mouths stitched shut. Eyes gouged out. Like they'd been turned inside out. Like they'd been worn. Like someone had tried them on and taken them off again. I gagged, stumbled back. Something cracked beneath my foot. A skull. And then, the whispering started. Software wet, like flesh rubbing against flesh. I turned and saw him, the man in the mask. Only, he wasn't wearing it anymore. The skin collector. The mask had never been his face. It had been a placeholder for something else, something stitched together. His skin was wrong, a patchwork of stolen flesh. Megan's lips, a child's jaw, a man's forehead, pieces, all sewn together, trying to make a face, trying to look human, but the seams were splitting, the stitches tearing, something inside him writhing, shifting, pushing to the surface. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. He stepped closer, and in a voice made of too many voices, he whispered, "I need a new one." Then he lunged, the final tape. I don't remember getting out. I don't remember running. I just remember the cold, the feeling of his fingers, too many fingers, grabbing, tearing, reaching under my skin, trying to wear me, trying to make me fit. I remember screaming, and then, nothing. I woke up 3 days later, in my apartment. The tape was sitting on my desk, the same unlabeled VHS. I don't know how it got there, but I played it. I had to. I had to see. The footage was the same at first. Mr. Megan, the man in the mask. But then the tape kept going, past where it should have ended, past where the static should have started. and I saw myself standing in the hallway. But my skin wasn't right. The seams were splitting. The stitches were tearing. Something inside me was moving. I turned to face the camera. My lips, Megan's lips, smiled. And then, in my own voice, I need a new one. I paid for a dark web, live crime reenactment experience. The scene they chose was my childhood home in 1994. Alright, so before I even start, let me make one thing clear. I'm not a tech genius, and I definitely don't mess around on the dark web like some hacker in a movie. I'm just a regular guy who made a really bad decision out of curiosity. This all started about 2 months ago when I was scrolling through Reddit late at night. You know how it is. One thread leads to another, and suddenly you're reading about the most messed up corners of the internet. That's when I saw someone mention a site called Revenant Reenactments. At first, I thought it was one of those dumb RRGs or some creepy pasta type thing, but people in the comments were talking about it like it was real. According to them, it was an ultra-exclusive deep web service where you could pay to have real-life crime scenes recreated, murders, kidnappings, disappearances, all acted out in terrifying detail. Most people were just sharing secondhand rumors, but one guy claimed he had actually watched one. He said he paid nearly $5,000 in Bitcoin, and the scene he got was a reenactment of a 1992 gas station murder in Arizona. According to him, the actors had every single detail perfect, down to the blood splatter on the walls. I should have stopped reading. I should have gone to bed, but my dumbass curiosity got the best of me, so I started digging, finding the site. Now, here's the thing. Most people think you can just Google the dark web. You can't. You need a special browser, certain links, and sometimes even invite codes just to get in. Luckily, or unluckily, one of the Redditors had dropped a cryptic hint about where to look. Long story short, after about an hour of clicking through shady forums and downloading things I probably shouldn't have, I found the site. It was simple. Just a black screen with white text. History should not be forgotten. Experience the past. Underneath that, a box for an invite code. I didn't have one. I was about to close the page when I noticed something in the bottom right corner. It was a tiny chat window with a blinking cursor. I hesitated, then typed, "How do I get in?" The cursor blinked a few times. Then a response popped up. "History chooses you." I stared at the screen, confused. Before I could type anything else, another message appeared. "Check your email." My stomach dropped. I hadn't entered my email anywhere. I opened my Gmail, and sure enough, there was a new message. No subject, no sender, just a single link inside. At this point, every single part of my brain was screaming at me to stop, but I clicked it. Because of course, I did. The reenactment I chose, or so I thought. The link took me to a page with a list of crimes. I'm talking about actual documented murders, disappearances, and unexplained events. Each one had a short description, the year it happened, and a price. Some of them were famous, like the Elisa Lam case or the Dyatlov Pass incident. Others were lesser known, but just as creepy. I scrolled through, fascinated and horrified, until my eyes landed on something that froze me in place. It was listed as Unsolved Home Invasion, 1994, Michigan, $7,500. I don't know what made me click on it. Maybe it was the price. Maybe it was the lack of details, but when I did, a short paragraph appeared. In 1994, an unknown intruder entered a suburban home and brutally attacked a family of 3. The mother and father were found in the living room, but the child's body was never recovered. To this day, no arrests have been made. My stomach twisted, because I knew this case. It wasn't just some random crime. It was my childhood home. Why I had to know, I don't talk about my childhood much. But here's what you need to know. I was born in Michigan, but I was adopted when I was 5. My adoptive parents told me my biological parents had died in a break-in gone wrong. They never gave me details, and honestly, I never wanted them. But the moment I saw that listing, something inside me changed. There were too many coincidences. The date, the location, the missing child. Was that me? Had these people somehow gotten access to police records? Or worse, did they know something I didn't? I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe I thought I'd finally get some closure. Maybe I just wanted proof that this was all some elaborate hoax. Either way, I did something incredibly stupid. I bought the reenactment, the email that sealed my fate. About 10 minutes later, I got another email. This one had instructions. Your experience has been scheduled. You will be contacted with further details. Do not attempt to cancel. Do not share this information. Attached was a file. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. It was a Google Maps link, a street view image of my childhood home, and standing in the driveway was a man in a mask, looking directly at the camera. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at my laptop screen, the Google Maps image burning into my brain. The masked man in the driveway wasn't moving, wasn't blurred out like people normally are on Street View. He was just standing there, staring directly at the camera, as if he knew I was looking at him. I refreshed the page. He was still there. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, anyone. But who the hell do you call for something like this? Hey, 911. I think I just bought a murder simulation and they're using my childhood home. Instead, my screen lit up with a new notification. Unknown number. One new message. I swallowed hard before opening it. Check your mail. I don't know why, but my body went cold. I wasn't expecting any mail. It was 3 a.m. No one delivers mail at this hour. But I stood up anyway, my legs feeling like they weren't entirely my own, and walked to the front door. I hesitated before opening it. My apartment hallway was dark, the only light coming from a buzzing, half-dead fluorescent bulb near the stairs. And then I saw it. A single beige envelope lying on the welcome mat. No postage, no return address. I bent down, picked it up, and stepped back inside, locking the door behind me. My breath was coming out in short, shallow bursts as I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed in a simple, cold font, and it had rules. The rules of the reenactment. You will receive an address. Arrive within the given time frame. No phones, no recording devices. You must follow all instructions given to you. Do not attempt to speak to the actors. They will not respond. If you see something that was not in the original crime report, ignore it. Once the reenactment begins, you must stay until the end. If you try to leave early, they will not let you. There was no signature, no explanation, just the rules, printed neatly on the page, like they had sent this 100 times before. And at the very bottom, in bold red text, failure to comply will result in consequences. I had made a mistake, a huge, irreversible mistake. And now, I was trapped. The house, that time, forgot. The next evening, I got the address. And yeah, it was exactly where I thought it would be. My childhood home in Michigan. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to find it demolished or turned into some normal suburban house with a minivan in the driveway. But when I pulled up, it was like stepping into a frozen moment in time. The same peeling white paint, the same broken porch light that never worked, the same curtains drawn tightly over every window, like whoever was inside didn't want the world looking in. I parked across the street and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to turn around, to drive away, to pretend this never happened, but I couldn't, because as I was sitting there, staring at the house, my phone buzzed again. A single text message. "You're late." I swallowed hard, shoved my phone into the glove compartment, and stepped out of the car. The air was thick, too quiet, the kind of silence that shouldn't exist in a suburban neighborhood. No cars passing, no wind, not even a single fucking cricket. I walked up to the porch, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. The front door was unlocked, and the second I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me. The crime scene. The house smelled like dust and something faintly metallic. I reached for my phone before remembering rule number 2, no recording devices. So I left it in my pocket and took a cautious step forward. Everything was exactly how I remembered it. The ugly floral wallpaper, the brown carpet with cigarette burns, the wooden coffee table with a deep scratch down the middle where my father once slammed a beer bottle too hard. And then I saw them, 2 bodies on the living room floor. My parents, or at least the actors playing them. They were lying in pools of fake blood, their bodies twisted unnaturally, their eyes wide open, glossy and unseeing. I knew it wasn't real. I knew they weren't really dead. But Jesus Christ, they had every detail right. The slash across my mother's throat, the dark stain on my father's shirt, right over his heart, the sheer terror frozen on their faces. I had to bite down on my tongue to stop myself from making a sound. And that's when I heard it, a faint scratching noise, coming from down the hall, coming from my old bedroom, the missing child. I moved forward like I was in a dream, my body completely disconnected from my mind. The hallway was darker than I remembered, narrower. The walls seemed closer together, like the house was breathing me in. I reached my bedroom door. The scratching was louder now, more frantic, like nails against wood. I didn't want to open it. Every muscle in my body was telling me to turn around, to run, but I did it anyway. The door creaked open, and there, in the middle of the room, was a tiny wooden box, a coffin, a child-sized coffin. The scratching was coming from inside. I stepped closer, my legs shaking so badly I thought I'd collapse. I knew what was going to happen next. I knew what I was about to see. But when I reached forward, when I slowly lifted the lid, the thing inside opened its eyes, and it looked exactly like me. The last rule. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. All I remember is the door slamming behind me, the house swallowing the sound. I was outside, back in my car. I don't even remember getting inside, but my hands were on the steering wheel, my breath coming out in short, hysterical gasps. My phone buzzed one last time. I forced myself to look. A final message from that unknown number. Congratulations, your reenactment is complete. I was about to throw my phone out the window when another text popped up. Your final rule, Do not look in your back seat. I froze. The car was silent, but I could feel it. Breathing. Right behind me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers went numb. My entire body locked in place like a mannequin, because I knew if I turned my head, if I looked into the rearview mirror, I would see something that would break me. The car was too quiet, but I could hear it. The breathing. Slow. Wet. Wrong. It was deep, like something struggling to fill its lungs. Something that had been dead too long and forgotten how to function like a person. I swallowed, my throat clicking dryly. Then, from the back seat, a whisper. Drive. The longest drive of my life. I pressed my foot against the gas pedal, moving way too fast down the empty suburban road. My brain was scrambling, trying to find some kind of logical way out of this. Maybe it was an actor. Maybe this was just some elaborate scare tactic. Maybe, but no. No actor could have gotten in my car. I had locked the doors. I swallowed back bile, my hands slick with sweat against the steering wheel. I had to force myself to blink, my eyes burning from keeping them wide open for too long. I wasn't going to look, no matter what. But then the thing in the back seat did something horrible. It laughed. At first, it was small, a short, breathy chuckle. Then it grew louder, thicker, like something getting too comfortable. It wasn't the laugh of a human being. It was wrong, like the sound of teeth clicking together, of wet, rotting flesh slapping against itself. And then it said, my name. You were supposed to be in the box. I almost lost control of the car. The exit that didn't exist. I took a sharp turn onto the highway, my heartbeat hammering in my ears, drowning out everything but the things breathing. I had no idea where I was going. I just needed distance. But then I noticed something was wrong. The signs on the highway. They were changing. 1 second, they were normal. Exit 210, next gas station in 5 miles. Then I blinked, and they changed. The words twisted, warping into something else. Exit 1994, home sweet home. I sucked in a sharp breath, forcing myself to stare at the road. This was just in my head. It had to be. Then another sign. No exits for the rest of your life. I clenched my jaw, gripping the steering wheel so hard my nails dug into the leather. Then, the worst one yet. Look in the back seat. The thing in the mirror. I slammed my foot against the brakes. The car screeched to a stop in the middle of the highway. The second the tires stopped moving, the breathing behind me changed. It got excited, like it was waiting for this moment. I stared straight ahead. I didn't move, didn't speak. And then, out of the corner of my eye, the mirror moved. I didn't move it. I didn't touch it. It tilted, just slightly, like an invisible hand was adjusting it, forcing me to see. And I saw it. Jesus Christ. I saw it. It was me. But it wasn't. It was grinning. Too wide. Too many teeth. And its eyes. They weren't human. They weren't mine. They were holes. Deep, empty voids, stretching too far back into its skull. I gasped, slamming my eyes shut, my entire body trembling with cold, unfiltered terror. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. Then, next to my ear, a whisper. I can wear your skin better than you can. The chase. I slammed my door open and ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I ran. The pavement was cold and rough against my bare feet. I hadn't even realized I had lost my shoes at some point. But I didn't stop. Because the thing behind me did. It opened the door. I heard it step out of the car. I heard it following me. But the footsteps weren't right. They didn't match mine. They didn't match anything. It was like it was walking on too many legs. I sprinted faster. I had no idea where I was going. The highway was wrong. There were no lights, no cars, no stars, just darkness stretching infinitely in every direction, like I had driven straight into nowhere. But I could still hear it, getting closer, closer. And then, the gas station, the attendant. It was the only thing in the distance, a flickering neon EXXON sign buzzing weakly against the night. I don't think I had ever run so fast in my life. I stumbled into the gas station, nearly collapsing against the door. The attendant behind the counter barely looked up. An older guy, maybe mid-50s, with a beer belly and a blank expression. I ran up to the counter, gasping for air. "Help!" I croaked. "Please, someone is..." But then I saw his face, and my stomach dropped, because I knew him. I'd seen his photo before, in a case file, from 1994. He was the gas station clerk who had been killed the same night my parents were murdered. The same night I was supposed to go missing. His throat had been slit, and now, up close, I could see the scar, a deep, jagged line running from ear to ear, like someone had put him back together. He grinned, and then he said the words that destroyed me. "Welcome home." The last stop. I turned, and the thing was inside. It had followed me. Number. It had been waiting for me. It didn't have a face anymore. It was blurry, like static on a TV, like something was trying to decide what it wanted to be. Then, it moved, too fast. It was in front of me, before I could blink. I felt hands grab my shoulders, and then everything went black. The box. I woke up to the sound of scratching, slow, deliberate. I tried to move, but I couldn't. I was inside something small, something wooden, and then I realized, the coffin. I was in the coffin, the same one from the reenactment, the same one that had been in my old bedroom. I started to scream. Then I heard the whisper from outside. "You should have stayed in the car." And then they started nailing it shut. The first nail went in with a sickening crack. I felt the vibration shake through the wood, through my chest, my skull. It rattled my teeth like I was being stapled into the earth itself. I screamed. It didn't matter. The second nail went in, then the third, each one sealing me tighter inside the box. The coffin smelled like rot and damp wood. The air was thick, pressing in on me, stealing every breath before I could take it. And outside, I could hear them. Not just one. Not just the thing that had followed me from the car. More. Many. A chorus of hushed, guttural whispers. They were laughing. They were enjoying this. And between their raspy exhales, I heard the voice that had haunted me since I entered that house. The one that spoke to me in the car. The one that wore my face. It leaned close. Its mouth was right next to the wood, and it whispered, "We finally fixed the mistake." Buried alive. I thrashed. I kicked, slammed my fists against the coffin lid, but there was no space. I could barely bend my legs. I could barely move my arms. The wood was pressing against my chest, my ribs, crushing me, like I was being swallowed alive. Then, dirt. I heard it. The first scoop. A dull, muffled thud as they dropped it onto the coffin. Then another, and another. They were burying me. I screamed until my throat felt raw, until my lungs burned like they were about to collapse. But the dirt kept coming, falling heavier now, filling the spaces around me. The air grew thicker. I could feel it in my ears, pressing against my skull. I gasped, but there was nothing left to breathe. And for the first time in my life, I thought, This is it. I'm going to die in this box. Alone. Forgotten. Just like I was always meant to. And then, I felt something move. Inside the coffin. With me. I wasn't alone. It was small. Thin. Fingers. They brushed against my leg. I froze. My heart stopped. Then, a whisper. Right next to my ear. Software. Delicate. A child's voice. "You took my place," I screamed. I thrashed harder, but the thing in the coffin moved faster. I felt nails scraping against my thigh, then my stomach, then my face. I tried to move, but it was too tight. I couldn't escape. I couldn't breathe. And then, it grabbed my wrist. It was ice cold, and it started pulling me deeper. The death of me. The walls of the coffin weren't wood anymore. They were soft, rotten, like flesh, like I had been swallowed whole. The air was thick with the scent of decay, of something wet and sour and long dead. I choked. I tried to kick, but it was pulling me further in. The child, the thing, its hands were digging into my skin, pulling me deeper, deeper, into a place I was never supposed to leave. And just before the last breath left my body, just before the darkness took me, the coffin broke open, and I was falling. The other side. I landed hard. My head slammed against something wet and slick. I gasped for air, choking on the thick, humid stench of rot. The coffin was gone. The dirt was gone. I was somewhere else. And as my eyes adjusted to the suffocating dark, I realized I was back in the house, but not how I left it. The walls were wrong. They pulsed, like they were breathing, like I was inside something alive. The furniture was rotting. The floors were sagging, soaked through with black, oozing liquid. And in the middle of the living room, the bodies, my parents, still there, but different, worse. They weren't just actors anymore. They were real. Their skin was bloated, peeling away from the bone. Their mouths were open in silent, frozen screams, and they were watching me, their dead, glassy eyes following my every move. I staggered backward, my stomach twisting violently, and then I saw her, the child. She was standing in the doorway. Her skin was paper-thin and gray, stretched too tightly over her bones. Her eyes were milky white, empty, and her mouth, Jesus Christ, her mouth was stitched shut. I opened my mouth to speak, but then the stitches snapped open, and she screamed. The final choice. The walls shook, the whole house convulsed, like it was alive, like it was coming apart, like the entire world was collapsing. And the child, the thing, ran at me. I turned, bolted for the front door. It wasn't locked anymore. It swung open too easily, like it had been waiting for me to run. I stumbled into the night. The house behind me collapsed in on itself, swallowed into the ground, like it was never there at all. I ran until my legs gave out, until my lungs burned, until my mind felt like it had been scraped clean of all reason. And when I finally looked back, the house was gone, and so was the street. So was the entire neighborhood. There was nothing, just a single highway, the one I had driven down before, and a single sign. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. I didn't want to read it, but I had to, because I already knew what it was going to say. No exits for the rest of your life. And when I turned back to my car, the backseat door was wide open, and something was waiting inside. The backseat door was open. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to see what was inside. But the highway stretched out in every direction, a never-ending void of black asphalt and flickering streetlights that led nowhere. The sky above me wasn't a sky anymore. It was something else, something watching, something waiting for me to make a choice, go back or get in the car. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry, my skin damp with sweat, my heartbeat a suffocating weight in my chest. Then, a whisper from the back seat. "Come home." I moved. I don't know why, but I did. Maybe I was too far gone. Maybe I had already lost. My hand reached for the door handle, and the second I touched it, the car changed. The car that wasn't mine. The interior wasn't the same. It wasn't my car anymore. The seats were torn, leather peeling like flayed skin. The dashboard was cracked, oozing something dark and thick. The steering wheel was rotting, black veins creeping along the surface, like something was alive inside. And the mirror, Jesus Christ. The mirror was covered in bloody handprints. Not just one. Dozens. Some of them small, child-sized. And in the middle of the seat, something was waiting. I couldn't see its face. Not at first. But its arms were long, too long, reaching across the seat like twisted tree branches. Its fingers tapped against the upholstery. 1, 2, 3. Slow, deliberate, like it was counting down. Then it tilted its head, and its face. It was me. Not a copy, not a reflection. It was me, but wrong. The skin was stretched too tight, the eyes hollow and black, like someone had emptied me out and left behind a shell. Its lips curled into a grin. Then it whispered, "You never left." The truth, I staggered backward. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I was still in that house, still in the coffin, still trapped somewhere between life and death. None of this was real. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it all to disappear. But then the car door swung open, and something grabbed me. The highway of the dead. I was yanked inside. The door slammed shut behind me. And then, the car started moving, by itself. I grabbed the steering wheel, but it didn't respond. The pedals weren't there anymore. The car was driving itself, speeding down a highway that shouldn't exist. The streetlights flickered past in a blur of yellow and black, the road stretching on forever. And then I saw them, the other cars, hundreds of them, all moving in the same direction, their headlights glowing like ghosts in the dark. But the people inside, they weren't people. Their faces were rotting. Their mouths were stitched shut. Their eyes, God, their eyes were gone. And in every back seat, there was something waiting, watching me, studying me, like I was the only one who didn't belong. I slammed my fists against the window, trying to break it, trying to get out. But the glass wouldn't crack. The door wouldn't open. I was trapped. And the thing beside me, the thing that wore my face, it started laughing. The destination. I don't know how long I was on that highway. Time didn't exist there. But at some point, the car slowed. The other cars started disappearing, one by one, blinking out of existence, like they had never been there at all. And ahead of me, I saw the sign, the same one from before. No exits for the rest of your life. And below it, welcome home. The car pulled off the highway. I didn't recognize the road at first, but as we got closer, as the trees thinned, as the streetlights cast long, twisting shadows across the pavement, I felt my stomach drop, because I knew where we were going. Back to the house, back to where it all started. I shook my head, trying to scream, trying to move, but my body wouldn't listen. The thing beside me grinned wider. It leaned in, pressing its lips against my ear, and it whispered the last words I would ever hear. You were never meant to leave. The last night of my life, the car stopped in the driveway. The house was waiting. The windows were black, the door slightly ajar, like a mouth inviting me inside. And as I stepped out of the car, as my feet touched the ground, I felt it. Something deep inside me shift, like I had just stepped into my own grave. The front door creaked open wider. I took a step forward, then another, and as I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me. I was home, and I was never leaving again. Final log. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. I don't even know if I'm still real. But if you're seeing this, if you ever find a site called Revenant Reenactments, if you ever think about buying a reenactment, don't. Because it's not a game. It's not a show. It's a trap. And once they pick you, you never escape. Because I finally understand what this was all about. I was never meant to live past that night in 1994. I was supposed to be the missing child. And now, I finally am. Connection lost. I bought a dark web phone number that connects to the past. When I called it, my grandmother answered, before she ever had kids. You ever do something so deeply, fundamentally stupid, that even as you're doing it, some part of your brain is screaming at you to stop? Not just a regular, this is a bad idea feeling, but a bone-deep, instinctual kind of warning, like something in your DNA, passed down from ancestors who survived by knowing when to run. That's what this was. And I didn't listen. It started with boredom. That's the stupid part. I wasn't some desperate person trying to contact the dead, or a grieving son reaching out to something beyond comprehension. I was just bored. I've always been fascinated by the kind of things you don't find on the surface of the internet. Not the cartoonish Hollywood version of the dark web, where you can hire a hitman or watch a live stream of someone being tortured. That's mostly just cop bait and scams. No, the real deep web is just odd. Private servers with unsettling chat rooms, archives of forgotten documents, marketplaces that sell things that shouldn't exist. And that's where I found the listing. A simple web page, plain white background, no header, just a single line of text. Buy a phone number that connects to the past. No description, no explanation, just a buy now button and a price tag, $50. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't the weirdest thing I'd seen for sale. Hell, I once found a guy selling used band-aids he claimed were cursed. But something about this one, it didn't feel like a joke. I don't even remember clicking the button, but I must have, because a few minutes later, an encrypted message popped up in my inbox. +23749184421. No sender name, no instructions, just the number. I copied it into my phone, and I called. The voice on the other end. The moment it started ringing, my stomach twisted. It wasn't normal. You know how a phone call usually has that rhythmic brrring sound? This didn't. It was just one long, continuous tone, like a hospital heart monitor, right before it flatlines. I pulled the phone away from my ear. My instincts were screaming at me, but I was already in too deep. Then, click, a breath, soft, shaky. Hello? It was a woman's voice, young, unsure. Something about it felt wrong, like I shouldn't be hearing it. Who is this? She asked. I swallowed hard. I was gonna ask you the same thing. Silence. Then cautiously. My name is Evelyn. A sharp chill went through me. That was my grandmother's name, but the voice wasn't hers. Not the way I remembered it, anyway. It was too young, too alive. My mouth was dry. Evelyn, what year is it? She gave a nervous little laugh. What kind of question is that? It's 1977, 1977. I fühlte Pulsen, I mit Hode. I gripped the phone tighter. My ears were ringing. "Where do you live?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "In Chicago," she said. My breath hitched. My grandmother was from Chicago. This was real. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a hoax. This was her, but not as I knew her. I clenched my jaw. "Evelyn, do you have a locket?" she gasped. "How do you know that?" "Because I have it. It's in my dresser right now. A small silver locket with a photo of a man inside. A man she never told anyone about. Not my mom. Not my aunts. No one." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. "Hello?" she said again. I hung up. The first message. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone. I was shaking. My entire body felt wrong. My stomach churned. Then my phone vibrated. One new message from unknown number. I didn't want to check it, but I did. "Why did you hang up?" My skin went cold. The message was still delivering. I watched as the little text bubble appeared. 3 dots, typing. Then another message. "I had a dream about you." I felt physically ill. I didn't answer. I turned my phone off, and for the first time in my entire life, I was afraid to sleep. The second call. That night, I kept my phone on silent. I shoved it under my pillow. But at exactly 3:14 a.m., it started ringing. I woke up to the glow of my screen, illuminating my ceiling. It was the same number. +2 3 7 4 9 1 8 4 2 4 2 1. I stared at it, heart pounding. And then, against every ounce of self-preservation in my body, I answered. There was no greeting, no hello, just breathing, slow, uneven. "I had another dream," she whispered. I didn't move. "I saw you," she said. "But you weren't alive." I slammed the phone down, and I blocked the number. The last message. For a while, nothing happened. A week passed, then 2. I started to sleep again, started convincing myself it was some kind of weird ARG or an AI experiment, until today. This morning, I woke up to a small brown envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, no sender name. Inside was a Polaroid, a photo of my grandmother. She was standing in front of my childhood home, a place she had never been. And in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, was me, standing there, watching, wearing the same clothes I'd gone to bed in last night. I don't know what to do. There are certain moments in life that don't feel real when they happen. Your brain just refuses to process them because they shouldn't be possible. Like a video glitch in reality, or the universe slipping up and showing you something you were never meant to see. Holding that Polaroid in my hands was one of those moments. I don't know how long I sat there staring at it. My fingers were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. The photo was faded, a little grainy, but the details were undeniable. It was my grandmother, standing in front of my childhood home, a house she had never seen in her lifetime. And in the corner, deep in the shadows, almost hidden, was me, watching, wearing the same clothes I'd gone to sleep in last night. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't some trick. This wasn't an AI-generated image or a clever hoax. It was a real, physical photograph. I could smell the old chemicals on it, the faint scent of dust and time, the kind of smell that only old memories carry. I flipped it over. There was something written on the back. "See you soon." My stomach twisted so hard I nearly collapsed. I grabbed my phone with numb fingers, still shaking, and unblocked the number. It was gone. No history, no messages, no call logs, like it had never been there. The black car. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat at my window, gripping the Polaroid so tightly, my nails dug into my palm. My apartment was dark. the only light coming from the street outside. I kept my phone beside me, watching the screen, waiting. For what? I don't know. But something inside me knew that this wasn't over. And then, around 3 a.m., I saw it. A black car, parked on the other side of the street. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. No headlights, no engine sounds, just sitting there. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a random car, someone parked for the night. But the more I looked at it, the more wrong it felt. The windows were tinted pitch black, no reflections, no light bouncing off the glass, just pure darkness. And the worst part, I could feel something inside, watching. My skin crawled. Every hair on my body stood up. I turned away from the window and grabbed my phone. My first instinct was to call someone, anyone, but what the hell was I supposed to say? Hey, I think there's a demon car outside my apartment. Yeah. Number instead, I snapped a picture. Or at least, I tried. The moment I pressed the shutter button, my phone screen glitched. For half a second, it flickered with static. Old school VHS static, like something out of a corrupted tape. And then the screen went black. My phone shut off. I felt an ice-cold wave of dread wash over me. I tried to turn it back on, but nothing happened. The battery had been at 82%. There was no reason for it to die. That's when I looked back out the window. The car was gone. The phone rings. Again. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My reflection in the glass was pale, wide-eyed, staring back at me like a ghost. And then, from somewhere deep in my apartment, the phone rang. I froze. My phone was dead. It was sitting right next to me, black screen, completely unresponsive. But the ringing was still there, and it was coming from the kitchen. I slowly stood up, every part of me screaming to run. I moved towards the sound, my heart hammering against my ribs. The air in my apartment felt thicker, heavier, like something unseen was pushing against me, suffocating me. And then I saw it. A landline phone. A fucking rotary phone sitting on my kitchen counter. I don't own a landline. I sure as hell don't own a rotary phone. But there it was, ringing, shrill, mechanical, endless. I don't know why I answered it. Maybe because some part of me already knew who was on the other end. I picked up the receiver with shaking fingers and slowly brought it to my ear. For a second, there was nothing, just static. And then, a voice. I told you not to hang up. My grandmother's voice. But this time, it was wrong. Distorted, hollow, like she was speaking from somewhere far away, somewhere she shouldn't be. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Why are you doing this? I whispered. A long, painful pause. Then, so soft, I almost didn't hear it. I'm not the one calling you. My entire body locked up. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. And then, in the background of the call, faint, muffled, like someone was pressing their lips right up to the speaker. A voice that was not hers. A voice that was low, crawling, inhuman. He's watching you. The call cut off. The phone in my hands vanished, like it had never been there. I stood there in my kitchen, alone, shaking, cold. My phone screen suddenly flickered back on. 82% battery, like nothing had happened. Except now, I had a new notification, a voicemail, from the same number. I don't know if I should listen to it, but I don't think I have a choice. There are certain moments in life where your brain and your body completely disconnect. Your body knows something is wrong before your brain can catch up. That's what this felt like. My phone screen flickered in the dark. The voicemail notification sitting there like a loaded gun. I didn't want to listen, but I knew I was going to. I had to, because some sick, twisted part of me understood this wasn't over. It wasn't going to just go away. So with a deep breath, hands trembling, I tapped the notification and pressed play. Static, loud, piercing, like an old TV set struggling to find a signal. Then a voice, faint, muffled, like it was coming from deep underwater, but I recognized it instantly. Hello? My stomach twisted. It was my own voice. Is someone there? I gripped the phone tighter. My breath hitched. This was me, but I had no memory of recording this. Then a second voice. Heron Evelyn, my grandmother. You shouldn't have called, she whispered. A sound in the background. Faint. Almost like a door creaking open. And then a third voice. A voice I had never heard before in my life. You brought him here. My vision blurred. My chest tightened like something heavy was pressing down on it. Because that voice wasn't human. It was low, rasping, wet, like something was trying to speak through broken vocal cords, like something was trying to mimic a person. You brought him here, the voice repeated, and then the sound of something moving, fast, footsteps, but wrong, too light, too fast, too many at once. Then Evelyn's voice, screaming, a wet, choking noise, gasping, desperate, and over it all, that third voice, laughing, a slow, dragging, inhuman laugh, then silence, and a final whisper. Run, the voicemail ended, the reflection. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. The room felt wrong. It was too quiet, like the entire world was holding its breath. I stood up, my body moving before my brain could process what was happening. My legs felt numb, weak, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I stumbled into the bathroom, turned on the light, and nearly collapsed. Because in the mirror, it wasn't me. It looked like me, but it wasn't. The reflection was off. The angles of my face were too sharp. My eyes were too dark, and it was smiling. I wasn't smiling. I took a step back. The reflection didn't move. It just stood there, grinning, mouth stretched too wide, teeth that were too white, too perfect, too many. Then it spoke, but its lips didn't move. Its voice was in my head. He sees you now, I screamed, and the bathroom light exploded. The house, in the woods. I don't remember running. I don't remember grabbing my keys, my wallet, my shoes. All I know is that I ended up in my car, driving. I don't even know where I was going. I just needed to move. The roads were empty. No other cars. No streetlights. Just blackness stretching on forever. Then, headlights in the rearview mirror. Bright. Too bright. I squinted, trying to see the car behind me, but the lights were blinding. They didn't flicker, didn't dim, just burned pure white. My hands clenched the steering wheel. I pressed the gas. The car behind me did the same. It was following me. I swerved onto a side road, a narrow, winding path leading into the woods. The headlights followed. I was going 80 miles per hour now. My breath came in ragged gasps. My pulse hammered against my skull. The road curved, sharply, too sharply. I spun the wheel. The car skidded. The tires screamed. And then, darkness. The man at my window. I woke up to the sound of knocking. My eyes snapped open. I was still in the car. The engine was dead. The air was thick and cold. And there was a man standing outside my window. I couldn't see his face, just a silhouette, outlined by the moonlight. He knocked again, 3 times, slow, deliberate. My entire body locked up. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he bent down, pressed his face against the glass. and I saw his eyes. Black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye. Empty. Hollow. Endless. A voice slithered into my ears. He sees you now. My phone vibrated. I almost didn't want to look, but my hands moved on their own. A new message. From the same number. One word. Run. I looked up. The man was gone, but the forest around me was full of them. Figures standing between the trees, silent, watching, smiling, and every single one of them had my face. The new voicemail. I don't know how I made it out of there. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember unlocking my apartment door, stumbling inside, collapsing onto the floor. But somehow, I did. And now, as I sit here, my phone vibrates again. A new voicemail from the same number. My hands are shaking as I press play. The recording starts, and I hear breathing, not from one person, from many. Slow, shallow, inhuman, and then a whisper, so soft I barely hear it. We're already inside. The call ends, and behind me, the closet door creaks open. The human brain does this thing when it's confronted with something it isn't meant to understand. It freezes. Your body locks up. Your thoughts scatter. Every survival instinct you've ever had starts screaming at you to run, but you can't move. That's where I was, sitting on the floor of my apartment, phone clutched in my shaking hands, heart pounding. And behind me, the closet door creaked open, soft breathing, right behind me, shallow, ragged, not mine. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body was locked in place, like something invisible had its claws deep in my spine, holding me still. Then, a footstep. Slow, deliberate, closer. My vision blurred. My lungs burned. I wasn't breathing, because I knew. If I turned around, I would see something I wasn't meant to see. And if I saw it, it would see me. Then the whisper, so quiet, it was almost inside my head. Why did you bring me here? I felt teeth in those words. Something ancient, something hungry. Then, just as quickly, silence. The air in the room shifted, like whatever had been there was gone. But I knew it was never really gone. The phone number that doesn't exist. I don't remember sleeping. I must have, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. Sunlight poured through the blinds. Birds chirped outside. And for a split second, I almost believed everything was normal. Then I saw my phone. One new message from the same number. I didn't want to read it. I did anyway. It's already too late. A sharp, ice-cold dread stabbed into my ribs. I needed answers. I opened my laptop, hands shaking, and typed the phone number into Google. Nothing. I tried tracing the country code. Nothing. I ran it through every reverse lookup site I could find. Nothing. Like the number didn't exist. Or worse, like it existed somewhere else. I was about to close my laptop when a notification popped up. New email. No sender. No subject. Just a single attachment. A video file. The video I didn't want to open it, but my fingers moved on their own. The screen went black for a moment. Then, a home video. Old. Grainy. Faded colors. A woman in her 20s laughing, sitting at a kitchen table. My grandmother. I felt my throat close up. It was 1977, the exact year she told me when I first called the number. But this wasn't just some random old footage, because sitting across from her was me. I wasn't born yet. I hadn't even been thought of yet. But there I was, sitting at the table, smiling. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was beating so fast I thought I was dying. This wasn't real. This wasn't fucking real. Then, from inside my apartment, a voice, software familiar, my grandmother's voice. Why did you bring him here? I turned, and I wasn't alone. The tall man, he was too tall. That was the first thing my brain registered. His head brushed the ceiling. His limbs were too long, too thin. And his face. There wasn't one. Just smooth, stretched skin, like something had wiped it clean. My grandmother's voice, coming from his mouth, mimicking her, repeating the same sentence, over and over and over. Why did you bring him here? Why did you bring him here? Why did you bring him here? I ran. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't grab my wallet. I just ran. Out the door, down the stairs, into the street. But the world outside wasn't right. The dead city. There were no people, no cars, no wind, just silence. The buildings were still there, but they felt wrong, like props on a movie set. I stumbled forward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I was dreaming. I had to be. Then, a sound, from behind me, a wet, crawling sound, like something dragging itself across pavement. I turned, and the tall man was there. Only now, his face was my face, stretched and wrong, grinning too wide, too many teeth. I turned and ran, but the city was changing, buildings melting, streets twisting into endless corridors, and the sky was wrong. No sun, no clouds, just a vast, endless blackness, and something was moving inside it, something big, something watching, and then a phone rang, from deep inside the black sky, and a voice, his voice. It's already too late, and I finally understood. I had never been talking to my grandmother. I had been talking to something else, and I had let it in, the final call. I don't know how I made it back. I don't know if I ever really left, but somehow I woke up in my apartment, on the floor, my phone in my hand, and the number still calling me. The screen flashed, ringing, endless. I know I shouldn't answer. I know if I do, I won't be here anymore. But the ringing won't stop. And I think I already answered. I can't move. I don't mean that figuratively. I physically cannot move. I'm sitting in my apartment, my phone in my hand, the screen flashing. It's still calling me. I don't remember answering. I don't remember lifting my hand to my ear, but the phone is already against my face, and someone is breathing on the other end, slow, wet, shallow. I don't speak. I can't. Then, from the other end, a voice, my own. You shouldn't have answered. The sound of something crawling. The walls are moving, not shaking, moving, like something is inside them, pushing against them from the inside out, stretching the drywall like thin skin. Something huge, something trying to get through. My breath catches in my throat. My vision swims. Then, a new sound from underneath me, like something crawling up through the floor. I stand, or at least I try. My legs won't work. It's like something is holding me down, something heavy. The phone is still at my ear. I can't drop it. I can't move my fingers. And then the voice, my voice, whispering, laughing. You brought him here. The thing in the ceiling. A crack splinters across my ceiling. Slow, deep, wrong. I can hear it spreading, cutting through the plaster like a wound splitting open. Something presses against it from the other side. A hand, thin, bony, too many joints, fingers curling against the crack, prying it apart. My lungs burn. I realize I'm not breathing. Then, the hand pushes through, and the arm, and then, a face. Not a human face. A hole, where a face should be. Just empty, stretching skin, and inside that hollow space, teeth. So many teeth, spinning in the darkness like a mouth with no beginning and no end. And it speaks, in my grandmother's voice. You should not have called. The hole widens. I can hear something breathing from inside it, something big, something that has been waiting. Then it drops down, the endless room. I wake up, but I don't think I ever slept. I'm not in my apartment anymore. I don't know where I am. It's a room, small, empty, no windows, no doors, just me and my phone, still in my hand, still ringing. The screen flickers. For a split second, I see something in the reflection, a figure behind me. No face, just a hole, a mouth that never ends. Then, the voicemail notification, new message. I don't want to listen. I already know what it says, but my fingers move anyway. The final message, a click, and then silence. Not just the absence of sound, the absence of everything, like the universe itself has been cut away. Then, a whisper, my grandmother's voice. Only this time, it's not my grandmother. It's something else. Something using her voice like a mask. It's already too late. And then, a new sound. Something wet. Something hungry. Something behind me. The voicemail ends, and my phone screen turns to static. But the call never really ends. And I think I was never supposed to hang up.